Everyone, we will open this meeting at 4:09, and this is the Miramonte, City of Soledad, Miramonte Affordable Housing Advisory Subcommittee Special Meeting of Wednesday, May 20th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Anyone that wants to join us for today, we do have different methods of being able to join us today. If you want to make any public comments for today's meeting, we do have the meeting agenda for today is 886-9252-3071. You can also join us via telephone at 1-669-944-49-171. Sorry about that. Let me just repeat that. It's 1-669-444-9171. So thank you everyone for joining us. With that, I will call this meeting to order. And if we can get roll call, please.
Committee member Ana Velázquez,
Here.
committee member Fernando Santos Sanchez.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And then we will go on to our next item of business, which is the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you can, those that are here with us, if you can please rise and stand with us as we do the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mayor Pro Tem, if you can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, so at this time, we'll move into public comments. At this time, any member of the public may address a committee on items of interest to the public that are within the jurisdiction of the Miramonte Affordable Housing Advisory Subcommittee. Speakers do have 3 minutes. Please be brief and to the point. No action or discussion will be taken by the subcommittee members of those items on any item not appearing on the agenda, except we can briefly request that our staff respond or briefly request that they address any of the items at a later time. So with that, I will open it up for public comments. Do we have anyone that is here? First, I'll start with those that are here in our council chambers. Any public comments? Okay, seeing none, I will take it out to those that are joining us via Zoom. If anyone is joining us via Zoom that'd like to make a public comment. Okay, so there is no one online for public comments on this item. So I will close the public comment. Then I will bring it, then bless you. Then I'll
All right,
bless
thank you.
you, and I'll bring it to the committee. Okay, I'll close the public comment and then I'll bring it to the committee business, and then we'll review. Then there's a review and provide feedback on the Miramonte Affordable Housing Plan, and I'll turn this over to sorry, I'm just spacing.
Beatrice.
Yeah, please. Apologize for that. It's been a long day. I'll turn this over to Beatriz Trujillo, our Community and Economic Development Director.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I will start the presentation and then I will turn it over to the developer and his team to explain his phasing plan. But let me just get the slides up 1 second.
Beatrice, before you start, I did want to clarify that the discussion is really going to revolve around a component of the affordable housing plan, which is the phasing plan, which will help us. The feedback is necessary for us to kind of take it to the next step. So just wanted to clarify that piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, a quick overview from for this project. As you know, this is a market rate development, but they are subject to our inclusionary ordinance, which for any housing project, they are subject to 20% according to our inclusionary ordinance. we will receive a presentation from the developer outlining the different phases of his plan. This is a phase project from 1 to 10. It contains 10 phases. So the committee will have an opportunity to provide feedback on the proposed phasing plan. And you can also provide feedback on what you would like to see as the next steps. If we can go to the next slide, please. So yes, as I mentioned, this project is subject to 20% of inclusionary housing, and that 20% has to be split between very low, and moderate incomes. So the inclusionary ordinance applies to this project as 6% low and very low, 6% very low income, 6% low income units, and 8% moderate income units. The total that will be required for this project is 479 affordable housing units in the 10-phased approach. And we hope that the first phases of this project, at least phase 1 to 3, can help us on the current RENA cycle, which is the 2023, 2030 RENA cycle. So we hope that the numbers can help us advance our RENA for this housing element. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the developer, or do I turn it over to the consultant?
Yeah.
To RGA, so that they can walk us through the phasing plan. I think one of the next one. Okay. Yeah, the next one. Thank you.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I was muted and didn't realize it. I will turn my video on here just for a second, or will it let me have video on? I don't think it's letting me have video, but I'm Miramonte Jensen, and I am a principal in the firm of Rogeri Jensen as our RJA. And we have been the engineers and planners on this project since 2020. And so tonight, I mean, I did you want me to just kind of go through by phase on the projects? I mean, on the phases for the plan? I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I
Yes.
think that would be a great idea.
Okay, okay. So the first two phases are, let's see, I guess this shows the whole thing, but here's the first two phases are in this area at the southern end of the project. And it includes the senior affordable, which is this kind of periwinkle color here. And the senior affordable will be built in the first two phases, and it will be both low and very low income inclusionary housing. And the remaining inclusionary requirement is the moderate level, which is shown. Is there a way to bring up the plan, because this isn't? Yeah, and then there we go. So here's so on the phasing plan for each phase, these pluses are where there could possibly are possible locations for duet, for sale, moderate income buildings. And but some of the buildings maybe could be built in the MDR area, depending on what affordable senior is built there and how much of that land they use. But what we showed on here is if all the if all the moderate income inclusionary housing was to be included in the low density area, these pluses represent duet buildings. So there would be 26 of those units required with phase 1. And then the next phase, does it just, can I step this down, Ariana, or? I don't know that I have control. Could somebody put it to the next slide?
Do you want to go back to the previous slide?
Actually, I think the next slide will go to phase 2, right? Is that
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So if we could go to phase 2, there we go. And so phase 2 is similar to phase 1 in how it's presented here. In phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4 are single family. And the senior affordable housing that is provided with phase 1 and 2 actually covers the requirement for phase 1 through 4 and actually goes a little bit beyond that, because if somebody could take it to phase 4. So so here you see the cumulative units provided when we provide all the moderate income necessary for the number of units in the first 4 phases, plus the low and very low provided in the senior housing. You get 196 units. That's 25% of the total units in those 4 phases. So the senior housing actually builds ahead on the affordable. So you get a nice chunk of low and very low affordable housing in the first 2 units that actually covers phases 1 through 4 plus a little bit of phase 5. So that's a nice benefit. A lot of projects we work on, you don't get that much up front. So the rest of the phases are very similar. When you get into phase 5, then you're north of the linear park and you're actually starting to develop in the medium density that's in the main core of the project. And so that medium density area can provide the low, the very low that are required, plus the moderate income could be put in that medium density area in all types of unit types, and it could be for sale. Also, the choice within that is that some of the moderate income could also be put in the low density residential areas, the same as we're doing in phases 1 through 4. And by the time you get to phase 5, you know, we're fairly far in the future, and it gets harder to predict what is desired by either the builders or the community, or what new housing types have come in that might work in the MDR area. But one really important point on this is every phase is phased to have at least its minimum inclusionary housing for all the different income types provided with that phase. We don't ever go in deficit with any phase. So you're either building what's required for that phase, or as I said, in phase 1 and 2, you're actually building ahead, but never behind. So all the other phases in the plan kind of go the same way. The table up here just shows the cumulative and the percent, the overall percent of what you've built, and you'll notice that it never falls below 20. So that's kind of the thrust of the phasing plan for the inclusionary housing at Miramonte.
Okay.
And I don't know if Leith had anything to add to that or not.
Not at the moment, but I'm sure we're gonna have a discussion. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Armenta, for that information. And thank you, staff, for providing the overview from last time. Yeah, and thank you. I know, just to reiterate, I know from the last time we wanted to bring back the phasing. And so thank you for providing that. And I know it was important to be able to look at the concurrency in terms of the market rate units and also the inclusionary units. And I think one of the items that was important as well in terms of the discussion is that we didn't want to defer the inclusionary units to be deferred to the later phases
Right.
of the development, as that was critical, with the understanding that obviously there's been a history and we wanted to make sure that we develop those inclusionary units as part of the development, that they were built concurrently, that they were built within the phases of the development. And I think the other thing that's important as well, just to mention, as part of the development, that they're also being built integrated, right? That they're integrated and that they're concurrent. So I think that's critical as well. So I have a couple of questions. I don't know if Mayor Pro Tem has a couple of questions, but
Through the chair, I just wondered, is it helpful to have that one table that describes all the phases
yeah, I
with
think
the
that's
numbers?
easier.
Yeah, if you guys could pull up that one slide.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Okay. So I have a couple of questions. You want?
Yeah, so
Want to go?
yeah, I can go first. So I was reading the notes. It says, well, one of my notes in regards to the phases is that excess units are could be credited. And so I have a question about that because I see for like phase one and phase two, there seems to be like the brunt is right there, and a lot of it is the senior housing, 134. Senior housing is needed, but it looks like almost half of the low and very low will come from the senior housing for all 10 phases. And so I have kind of I don't know, I feel like a little hesitant about that one. And then also it's I see in the notes as well that items are built depending on the market. And I'm just curious on like who dictates what the market is saying. Is that on us? Is that on the builder, developer, who kind of figures that out? I feel like that can kind of lead us into something where it can be stated that the market does not allow for items to be built, but may or may not be the case. So I have a little bit of concern regarding that as well. And then I'm excited about the duplexes, and I see them as like pluses of where they could be. How do we get from could be to will be is another question that I have. And then I want to make sure that, again, back with the credit, that we don't try to kind of do most of this as senior housing only, and then try to build up the credits with that, because there's a lot of different types of folks that need housing, that need this moderate housing, low and very low housing. And I don't want us to have that just be for seniors. I think it should be for a lot of different folks. We have a lot of families. We have a lot of folks that are single as well, that are on their own. And then with what's being built, will they be for sale for folks? Will most of that be like for rent? I'm not clear on that either. So those are just, I know that's like 10 questions in one, but those are the questions that I have.
Maybe I could sum up what I think your questions are, and then we can have the developer respond, and then maybe some of it Beatrice and I could respond. But it sounds like your questions are the 130 senior housing. Does it have to all be senior housing? Because while it's a need, there might be other needs for individuals as well as families.
Yeah, because from like how I see Oh, okay, no, I see it, yeah. It seems like a lot of it is just that, at least for that first 4 phases, it's all mostly, no, it's all senior housing for low and very low.
So regarding that, so I'm not, this is not gospel, or a declarative statement of any sorts. It's just my understanding with senior housing. Last time we discussed this, you suggested maybe splitting it up, having some senior housing in that section there, and then having some later on. I mean, if that can work, that sounds fine to me. My understanding is that if you're, say, the operator of a senior housing facility, there's more involved. It's not just an apartment complex. There's senior care components to it, and so it becomes more logistically. It becomes more difficult if you have 2 different facilities, like they're split up. That's my understanding. That said, I would let the operator of one of those facilities explain that and see if that is feasible. So that's just that's one of the challenges. Otherwise, the other possibility would be just reduce the total number of senior housing units. Like if it's instead of 134, the project had say half that, and then that project that 6.5 acres there, let's say it's 65, 70 senior housing units, and the rest are just open, and then we don't worry about necessarily senior housing in another spot if that becomes a logistical issue.
Open how? What do you mean?
Open as in like anybody, like it's not restricted to senior housing.
Family, it's called family.
Family. yeah.
Family housing.
And
Okay.
families are defined. It can be a single individual.
Can
Through the chair, it may be something to explore with your partner that might be doing this. But it seems to me you might be able to do the first phase as the senior housing, and then the 74 units as just a straight up affordable housing, because you're going to have, they still can be in the same area, but you're going to have 2 different complexes anyhow.
Yeah.
When we say
can-
affordable, sorry, and when we say affordable, are we saying affordable moderate, affordable low, affordable very low?
It would be low and very low.
Yes. So one comment I have is they can do both family and senior on the same site. We have a very successful project in Gilroy that was built that way. But this is more of a processing issue. And Megan and Ariana, this would be a question for you, but the specific plan is very clear that this area is senior affordable. So can that be changed just through the the inclusionary housing agreement, or does that need to be a specific plan amendment? If we went this way.
It's part of the specific plan. Okay, so that's, sorry. So can I ask a question? Because that's what so if it's part of the specific plan, because that was already approved, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to count all of those units as inclusionary, right? Because those were already approved as part of the specific plan, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those need to be counted under the affordable housing.
Yeah, they were in the specific plan. They were part of the affordable housing.
I mean, sorry, let me rephrase it. They were part of the specific plan, but those don't necessarily need to be counted under the inclusionary.
Yeah, they are part of the inclusionary in the specific plan.
Oh, they
And
are?
for the project to be successful, from what I understand, working with the affordable builders, they don't want market rate within their affordable. They can't do that. So there's a part of it is just a practical, but it also, I'm pretty sure I was trying to get my specific plan document up and I wasn't successful here. But
I think that's a question that needs further
yes,
research, Armenta.
definitely.
I think we understand that the council's interested in, if there's flexibility. I think I'm hearing a little bit, not just putting all the eggs into the basket of senior housing. Would that be a correct understanding?
That would be my viewpoint.
So I think, yeah, so I think for me, if we can do a combination of senior and multifamily to be able to count, right, as part of the inclusionary if we can. But I think, Armenta, I want to make sure that I respond to something you said in terms of the developers, because I think the other thing that I want to just really point out in terms of the development is that one of the integration is really critical as we're talking about the development and being able to have the inclusionary units and be part of the phasing. Because one of the things we don't want to do when you talk about environmental justice and social equity is, I think part of the inclusionary ordinance is also to be able to have this neighborhood and this development have the phasing where we have some of the units being integrated into these phases where you have neighborhoods that have the different income levels, right? So you don't have areas where you have all of your low income units that are segregated. That's not what we want to build here. We don't obviously want to have those type of neighborhoods. We want to make sure that we're integrating our inclusionary units with our, low, higher income units and market rate units, and that we're not excluding and segregating our communities. It's not what we want to be doing, regardless of what the developers, what kind of communities they want to build. That's not the communities that we want to have here.
On a different note, through the chair, I just wanted to, as we look at that specific plan, that whether or not they can be senior or multifamily, the one thing I will add, and this is where this project is very complicated, because it's kind of like if you tip one thing, it sort of throws off everything. So a lot of the traffic improvements and things and in the environmental document, there are triggers for those. So that could also be a reason why it's stipulated into this specific plan, because while we might want to do that, it might like throw the whole environmental document out of balance. So we'll check. We understand that that's the desire. But again, it's kind of like a complicated Rubik's Cube. And so if you move one, you sort of, it kind of messes up other things. So
I'd also like to make another point, just so everybody understands. If, say, the moderate or the low and very low were put into the MDR area, say in like phase 5 or 6, those would not fill up the areas that were being built. So they would definitely be integrated with market rate also, unlike where we talked about the senior affordable, where it all needs to be affordable. So there's a lot of options when you get to there, but Megan's right. There's several triggers that trigger either based on number of units or based on geographically where you are, that are complicated in how they drive the project. Now, if we were going down a path of trying to be flexible and move some of the senior, and we were, and if it required a specific plan, maybe some of those triggers also could be looked at, but it could get complicated really fast. And, but I hear the flexibility and I hear the integration, and, I think, as Megan said, it's complicated enough. It takes a little bit of study once there's direction.
Arminta, I have a question. So, as is, we have those 134 units in phases 1 and 2. Let's say that second tranche of the 74, let's say that is moved to, phase 3 or 4, since, the 60 is already putting us far ahead. If that next tranche comes, it doesn't have to be 60 and 74, it could be some other mix that comes a little bit later, does that help take off that pressure on the triggers?
Not really. In the first 2 phases, maybe a little bit, but it's a small number. Where the triggers come in is when you start getting into the middle area, and you have things like the fire station all of a sudden being brought in. That's what kind of ties your hands with stuff. But what does help late is if you did, let's just use the numbers that are there, 60 senior affordable and 74 moderate, or I'm not moderate, I'm sorry, family low and very low. Depending on the affordable builder, and they have a lot of constraints in and of themselves because of financing, but if one complex were built with phase 1 and 2, and then the other one with 3 and 4, that extremely helps the project because of the traffic triggers that are so heavy up front. It helps spread some of the costs a little bit because there's a concern of just getting this project off the ground with all the requirements. So, and so then that provides the inclusionary housing would still have to be at least 20% with every phase. But it does help spread some of the burden of that a little bit.
So Armenta, sorry, I have another question then. So with the phases and the 20% of the inclusionary units in every phase then, and under the specific plan mandate, so the 20% of all the units, then how does this meet what you presented to us then to be able to have 20% of all the units to be have the duplexes, the triplexes, or because I know under the notes in the legends, the 4 and the 5, I think it says the inclusionary units will have the duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, the rental units. But how will that be met throughout all the phases and not just in the phase 1 and 2?
Can somebody go to like phase 4 or actually maybe, yeah, phase 4 or 5 maybe? Just to get up there. So like here's phase 4, it's got duplexes and it's still benefiting from the higher densities that were done in the first phase. So let's go to phase 5. Okay, so in phase 5, can you guys see my mouse when I move it?
No.
No.
Oh, you can't. Okay. I was afraid of that. Can I pull something? I see somebody doing something there.
Yeah, I think Ariana's trying.
Yeah, if you want to instruct her on what she has a draw tool.
Yeah,
Whose arrow is that?
I don't know if maybe I can I grab it here? Maybe I
Oh,
can
there
do.
you go. We can see it now.
Oh, you can see it now. Okay, yeah,
Oh, that's Ariana.
it's kind of not following mine, so this may be a little clunky. Oh, so is somebody else moving it?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Ariana.
Oh, okay. That was weird. Is this one? Oh, I just drew something. Did you see that little mark? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay,
The green
ignore
one,
that
right?
mark, but yeah, ignore that mark, but now I know I can draw. So in this phase, the moderate is shown in this phase that it could be in the MDR area, but we have a note here that it could also be in the LDR areas. And then there's also very low and very low that would be in this MDR area that's part of this first phase. And so the point I was making, and then you can see when all these are in that the total overall is still at 22%. So we're still ahead of the inclusionary requirement. And that was one thing when I was laying that out, I always tried to make sure we were at least at 22, if not ahead in the cumulative of the phase. So the point I was making earlier was, say this is 44 inclusionary units for both the moderate income and low and very low. And this area, I don't remember off the top of my head. Yeah, oh, here it is right here. It has a total of 70 units. So if everything were put in that area, you would be integrated with both market rate and moderate inclusionary and low and very low inclusionary. If it was opted to put some in the LDR, those would be the moderate income. So some of those could go into the LDR area.
So those could still be modified. And even if you still modify them, you're still looking at the percentages of the inclusionary cumulative to ensure that you're still getting the 20%. So you don't want to
Exactly.
obviously decrease that, but you want it to increase to be able to, I mean, you could obviously increase, but you want it to be at the 20%. So that way you're making sure that in each phase, you meet the specific plan mandate of the 20%.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then I have one more question then on the duets. So if we're looking at the duets and to be counted toward the inclusionary, those are going to be deed restricted, correct?
That is the ones that are shown here. That is correct. Those would be inclusionary. And the only way you can guarantee going forward would be for them to be deed restricted.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you.
Through the chair, one thing too, I know that there was at one point a discussion about ADUs accounting for the inclusionary housing, but we said
no.
no. And so that's it, you know, consistent with that feedback of the old subcommittee.
That's right. That's been removed from the plan.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I did have, so thank you for that. I don't know if you have any additional questions.
I have more
yeah,
questions.
okay.
He did have three. I don't know if that was, I wrote them down, but
Yeah, if you want to finish your question, sorry, I just wanted to get that. So I got these answered, but I have some more if you want to finish yours.
Well, I'm waiting on the answers regarding who dictates like what the market is.
Okay. Well, the market is, that is the general population and buying habits and whatnot. And so the home builders, I mean, it's a science for them to understand what the market is. So they build to what people are going to buy. So it's gleaning recent sales data and trying to be predictive based on that, basically. So if they know a certain size house isn't going to sell very well in a certain kind of town, they're not going to build that house there. So that's what ultimately it comes down to. So it's just understanding what people want to buy or to rent. Ultimately.
and through the chair, just having done some of these subdivision developments up north, a good example is we had a tentative track map that was built over 20 years. It's really hard to know, 20 years from now what, and also technology changes. Like we have a lot more manufactured housing than we did in the past. But one of the trends that changed was they had a lot of 2-story houses, but the market wanted, like they were finding that the single stories were selling really quick. People were thinking about aging in place and so forth. So we had some flexibility to kind of change the mix of 2 stories versus 1 story to be consistent with what the market demand was. So that's one of the examples.
And then for the moderate MDR, those are what? What would those look like? Is that like a apartment complex style?
We most likely townhomes, and depend, for sale, townhomes, for rent. I mean, it'd most likely be like you get moderate apartments as well, mixed in in there. I was just kind of now thinking about the possibility of doing some sort of like, could like a complex of duplexes or fourplexes, something like that as well.
If somebody can go to the first page of the phasing plan, I put in that note, and I think somebody mentioned the note. Actually, that's the second page. There's the cover page. Do you have that in this PowerPoint?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Oh, no, but we have it though.
Oh, you have it. Okay, so look at note 6 on that one. That's actually coming from the specific plan of the various types of, oh, I'm sorry, did I say the right note? No, I'm not. Note 5. Look at note 5.
Oh yeah, we do have it. Sorry, we do have it.
Okay, so that's coming out of the specific plan of the types of units that can go in the MDR areas. And the specific plan isn't, it is loose enough that if a new type of unit that's not listed came in and there was a desire to have that type of unit, I don't think it would be a problem. But you can see there it's condominiums, townhomes, apartments, duplexes, triplexes, either for sale or rental. So, and as the market dictates, You know, that's a really complicated concept, and I've been doing this for decades. And it's always hard because there's a balancing act that goes on, because there's the ideal that we would all like to see, maybe because of preference or because of social sensitivity, but then there's also what somebody will build and what somebody will buy. And all of those items need to come together or the project just stymies. And um, so you want enough flexibility so that you can have that happen, because nobody wants for Soledad to not be able to deliver housing, and especially the housing that's needed at the various income levels. So there's always that little dance of what does somebody want to do? What will somebody buy? And what does the city need? And as each phase goes along, I think those discussions will happen.
Definitely. And I think for me, what I kind of struggle with a little bit is like, what will people buy? And like, that's very fair, but we want to make sure that when we say that, we're talking about the people that currently live in Soledad and not folks that are coming. You know, what I don't want to see is like our continued trend of being like a bedroom community and people just sleep here and commute out for work, right? And so they may work elsewhere and are coming down here because they can afford it, but our own folks can't afford it themselves. And I think that's where a little bit of my struggle is a little bit when we use that sort of phrasing. Um, what I'm also curious about too is like, as we're talking about the moderate and MDR areas, I know that Las Viviendas, some of the feedback that I heard was it was just kind of hard because like there's like one bedroom, and so you have your one bedroom downstairs, and then you have like your own little yard, and then the people upstairs, they don't really have much or a garage or anything like that. So it's just like all mixed in, and I feel like it would be nice if they're more uniform, so they all kind of look a little bit similar, and it's not, the quadplex. I don't know, it just felt like a Lego almost. I don't know if that makes sense.
Was that a specific project you were talking about, or?
Yeah, it's a project here in Soledad that I'm referring to that
Oh, okay.
we had. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, Legacy Homes built it in the past like 3 or 4 years, I think, or 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it again got kind of built over a few years.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So, one other point I would like to make that I think that I like about this project, I've done a lot of big phased projects over time, and this project has something that a lot of the projects haven't had, and that's that you have way more of a percentage of medium density residential than you usually see in these. You usually see a lot more single family. And you have more medium density residential than your inclusionary. And the specific plan actually talks about it. It's kind of a concept of affordable by design or affordable by density. And that's actually a real thing, because that list of unit types we just looked at, townhouses, condos, and that type of thing, that's where you get housing that is real for first-time buyers or for people who are lower income, but they don't want deed restricted. And when you add those to the inclusionary housing, I think there's a great opportunity for Soledad here to have some housing stock that meets an income level that's somewhere between your commute people and your people who really qualify for inclusionary housing. That's kind of the forgotten group, is those people that wouldn't qualify for inclusionary housing, but they can't qualify for a standard single family either. And this plan was set up for that. So there's a large number of units in those MDR areas that serve that purpose.
Go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, you have another question?
I might in the future.
You had a question about duplexes I wrote down. Was
Oh yeah, that because we said, oh, they could be here, and I just said, how do we go from could to they will be there?
Oh, within the like phase 1 right there, for instance.
Yeah.
So this is a silly distinction, but so technically duets is they're for sale. Duplexes are for rental. So just make sure like in the future we don't get that confused. But so in this case, the way you get those solidified is through the final map process. And so until then, I think we're not gonna be able to formalize that, right? Until the final map.
You, through the chair, you could, I think, look at having these maps, for the first 4 phases of the duets as part of the affordable housing plan with some flexibility where you have language that they need to be integrated throughout. And generally, I think the way you've laid them out does achieve that requirement, as a reference, but sometimes, you know, when you do the final, because when you get to the final map, you're really like, you know, making sure that the easements, and you're really getting to the nitty gritty, and sometimes realistically speaking, you know, the one you originally thought has to shift 1 or 2 lots over, but it still is achieving the overall, you know, mix where you don't have anything all just concentrated in one area, which I think the mayor was mentioning. So that would be my suggestion, that you have these 4 maps for the first 4 phases for the duets, but we put them in as kind of a reference point with that requirement that they be spaced apart. And then, like you said, in the final map, they get to that.
Yeah.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, Megan's totally correct there, because duets, because of their driveways being for so close and stuff, they're very susceptible to grades between the lot and the street and all that. So, and right now these plans are conceptual, they're not final plans whatsoever. But I think what you were getting at was the integration, that all 13 duet buildings are not all clumped in one place. I think that's what your concern was. Is that correct?
For me, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So what you're talking about here as part of the affordable plan is having a spec to spec that, not saying they have to be on this lot, but we don't want more than 2 side by side, or we want them separated by single family houses, or some kind of spec like that to achieve what you see on this sheet.
So when we get to there, because we're not there, but I appreciate the fact that we're having these maps and having the discussion, because once we get to the affordable housing plan, there has to be more, there has to be more language, and this is
Definitely,
right.
yeah.
And there has to be the language of concurrency. There has to be the language of integration. There has to be the language. I know we, I would, the conversation about home ownership versus rental. Yeah, I don't know. I know we have the 6% very low, the 6% low, the 8% moderate, and we have the total numbers. I don't know, obviously, because it has some leeway in terms of the market dictates in the future with the phases. And I get it, but obviously we want these units built. But is there a way that there could be already, at least for the duets that we know, those are going to be for homeownership, that we can, as Megan said, how can we already have for those? The senior housing, obviously that's going to be rental, right? We know those are rental units. Can we already assign for some of those? How do we put in that language when we're putting together the affordable housing agreement? So there's some type of memorialization in there for some of those that we know. Because the market, even though the market conditions will change, you're not going to build a senior unit that is, for sale, right? You're not going to build
Right.
units that are
That's
rental.
right.
Yeah, and I think,
Well, actually, to that point, there is a scenario where the duets maybe don't sell very well, and they might have to be rented for a while. That is a possibility. So that's something to consider. So a for sale project could be built and then not sell right away. So
But it
maybe
can
we
be
might have to
set
have that
up,
flexibility.
but it can be set up to be sold.
Absolutely.
Way different than an apartment, so.
Right.
But that could be language in the inclusionary
Correct.
housing agreement.
yeah, and I would think that we can have a goal, but I would really focus on the first 4 phases, because once you get beyond that, it's highly, who knows what we might have in some unknown future of what the housing demands may be, and people might not really like home ownership. Today it's people do want it, but it
Mhm.
it might be a little bit different. So, it could be a goal, but maybe not a written in stone, but maybe the
Yeah.
4 phases could be a little bit more specific, because they're the ones that are going to come in the near term.
So can you go back to the other where we have all the phases? But Megan, when we're doing the affordable housing agreement for the development, it's gonna be for all the phases, so. Doing
But you could have a time where there is a process where the documents looked at again, say at phase 5, that a committee like this would discuss the specifics going forward. Because what Megan's saying is true. As things change, it is amazing in the development world or in the home world, how much things do change in like 5 or 10 years. And then of course at any time I think it can be opened up again, but you could put in some, what would you call those, Megan, like milestones or something, where it's discussed or refined at a level that phases 1 through 4 are going to be refined in the document.
Yeah, and you would put like having worked on it for the future growth areas, we had I think, Mayor, as you were talking about certain standards that were in place, but it wasn't as when it related to market conditions, it had goals, but there was still flexibility within it
Yeah.
to meet the market demands. But still, we can assure like fair housing, that there's not an over concentration of the affordable inclusionary units and some of the things that you kind of mentioned, that a desire to have home ownership opportunities. The biggest challenge with home ownership for low and very low is people may never qualify for the mortgage
Right.
payment, and then you're kind of cutting those folks out of the maybe a rental housing that they need as a stepping stone to eventually get to homeownership.
Yeah.
But the moderates could be more heavily looking at an ownership
Mhm.
product.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
since we're gonna do more of the moderates, if we're taking a look at where the senior is gonna fall, right? Since we're doing the heavy on the seniors and the first phase and the second phase. I think what I would like to see, and I don't know, Councilmember Ansaldo Sanchez, but
Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem on the third and fourth phase, if we're gonna be looking at doing, obviously all the 10 phases, but concentrating on the first to be able to have more, doing a little bit more detailed on that, where we can have more of those than units. Obviously, we have to have the 20% in each of those categories, but to do more in the third and fourth, then instead of just having 8 units in third and fourth phase, doing more of the inclusionary there.
So the reason why there's 8 there is because those are actually smaller phases.
Yeah,
so
they're
it's-
smaller.
Yeah, if you kind of look at phase 1 and phase 2, you actually have, I believe, 26 in phase 1. And these are all duets, so they're all home ownership. So if you combine those 4 areas, you'd have 52 moderate ownership units
So you have,
as the duets, is what I understand.
so
That's right.
in the first phase, you have 311 units that you're building. And you have 568 in the second phase that you're building.
I think that's
That's
cumulative.
that's cumulative.
Yeah,
So you're building 311 in the first and 257.
right. I think
Second.
that's, yes, that's correct.
And in
And
the
then-
third, you're only building 95.
Correct. That's why those numbers are smaller.
And then 108.
And then in each of those first 4 phases, they're proposing duets that would be ownership for moderate in addition to the multifamily units.
Okay, because these would be the 8 duets here and the 8 duets here.
Mhm.
Okay.
And through the chair,
Yeah,
one thing I should mention is really phases 1 and 2 are what's reflective in our RENA. We didn't reflect after the first 2 phases.
Yeah, but I think what I'm saying still, Megan, though, the affordable housing agreement, we're not just reflecting what's in the RENA, we're reflecting in the affordable housing agreement is gonna be for the 10 phases, right? It's not just the RENA numbers, we're not just doing the affordable housing agreement for the first 4 phases, it's it's the affordable housing agreement is gonna apply for the entirety of the development.
For the inclusionary housing.
For the
Yeah.
inclusionary
I just-
housing, so I guess what I'm,
I just meant the nice thing about for our arena numbers is because we've been deficient in the low and very low. So the nice thing of having kind of these upfront units in the phase 1 and phase 2s helps us achieving our arena
In the current cycle.
in the
and the
current cycle.
which is good. I'm just, again, given that we don't know what the market conditions are and given just that we don't know. So I don't know, what happens after phase 5, 6, 7, or 8. And given that we have a lot of the other units included in those other phases, will those other phases be built or not? I guess that's just I just want to make sure that when we're looking at this holistically, that we're also making sure that if the other units are going to be in the later part of the development, that does get built and that we don't leave some of those units until the later phases. And then we come up into the possibility that those may not get built. That's where I'm looking at, is it a possibility to have more of the units up more in 3rd and 4th phase?
There's many triggers in the specific plan that make that very difficult. From an ability for the project to move forward. The up through phase 4, they're still building ahead on their low and very low. That the other way to do it, but I don't know that it's really beneficial, is to spread those low and very low out over the 4 phases instead of doing them all in the first 2. That's probably not practicable for affordable housing builders. That's why they're being built so early. And it's just an advantage to the city to have those available to the community earlier. If we were following the affordable to the letter of the law and doing 20% in every phase, those 134 would be spread over the phases 1 through 4, with a little bit in 5, I think, if I remember right, instead of building them up front. So we see it as a benefit to the community that they're getting those sooner than they're required.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, because I know you're building the 60 and the 74 up front, right? In the first 2 phases, as opposed to when I'm looking at phase 9, then you have 84 in the very low. And then, well, you don't have 84, you have 20 and the 45 and the 54 and 9. So really the 7 and 9 is where you get the bulk of them later.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Truthfully, these are numbers that are calculated just based on the percentages. And what I've seen happen, like take those 12 low and very low in phase 5. When the owner goes out to find somebody to build those, they're probably going to be a low income builder because of the rate. And that low income builder is going to say, I need 40 to make this work. I can't build just 12 units. So what I've seen generally is that they move ahead of the statutory requirements just because the practicality of how many units they need to make a project work.
So I have a question about that then. So if that is the case, right, you do get to the 12, they're like, we need 40 to make it work. On the notes where it says the credited, does that mean that the 22 moderate then would get removed in order for it to move forward?
No, not at
Does it
all.
mean
That
that in the
means,
future that then we would cut instead of 23, it'd be 0 because we did 40?
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. It's that you're moving forward the same type of unit coming forward, not stealing from the moderate or anything.
Okay.
Okay, so these can change then. So these can change.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, what this is your minimum requirement. And we can't predict what'll happen, but that's why I have that note in there that you credit going forward so that a builder that comes in that needs a certain critical mass of units to make their project work can have that flexibility without this having to come back to the committee every time.
So if these are just depending on the market, so we can technically put the units like the 54 up higher and it can change, right?
Well, in the plan, we wouldn't, this is your minimum required. But as it moves, as the project moves forward, because we allow people to build them sooner and they'll credit to later units, then yes, it could move forward. But we wouldn't want to show it as a statutory that you have to build all of those earlier.
Because you already achieved the 20% in each of the phases.
Right. And so you allow the flexibility, but to show the minimum that has to be built.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. So we're still, so that's still flexible. I guess for me, this is my last comment on that. So that's my only concern again is I know we've achieved the 20 based on the phasing, but if we can look at my only concern is getting to the phase 6 and 7 and those units not being built. That's my only concern.
Can I ask a question when you say they wouldn't be built? Even though the market rate were built, or I'm not quite sure I'd like to understand that
Oh,
concern.
so say the developer goes, we built phase 1 through 4, market conditions, just, the housing market tanks, whatever happens, we've experienced that in the past. And then there is no, the finances aren't there for the next phases to be built from that development, and then the rest of that sits empty for several years, right? And we don't see that development move forward, and that's a reality because it's happened in many other areas, not just here. And I think that's where I'm concerned, that how do we make sure we get the inclusionary units that our community needs now from the first couple of phases as we move forward. And I know it's a balance, because obviously the inclusionary units have to be done throughout the different phases, right? We have to achieve based on our specific plan, the 20% that have to be met throughout the phasing from the development. So, yeah, that's my concern. That's my only concern.
I think through the chair, because they're upfronting those units in phase 1 and phase 2, it means if they stop at phase 4, they'll actually overbuild the inclusionary units. I think it'll be at 25%.
Yeah.
So if it stops at phase 4, they'll actually achieve a higher percentage than what's required. They'll be at 25%. So they're always kind of building ahead, so they never fall, below that 20%, no matter where they stop. And depending on where they stop, if they stop at phase 4, it's 25%. I think if they stop.
Mhm.
In later phases, it's 22%. And I think only, can't remember what phase they actually reach the 20%.
At phase 8.
Yeah, at phase 8. So they're building, so if they stop anywhere up until phase 8, they're always going to be ahead
Yeah,
with
but they-
this phasing plan.
But under the inclusionary, they need to build 479 units.
If they build all of the
Phases.
right.
Yeah, so if they build on the first two, the 86 and 94, they haven't achieved the 20% because they're not building 479 in the first two phases.
The 479 are tied to the number of market rate units. So they'll also not, they're only required to build the 20%
Oh,
of
if
the
they build
units.
total, okay.
So
Based
the,
on the 2,390.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're
So-
right, they might not, but they will.
But
be
they
ahead.
also won't be
Based only on-
building the market rate units.
Mhm.
Got it.
Mhm.
Okay, got it. Okay, well, thank you. Let me just make sure do you have all your questions answered? Let me make sure I just got all my questions answered as well. And just in terms of, I know you guys are working, Megan, on the development agreement, and my only other concern is making sure that on the infrastructure plan that you're working on with the affordable housing agreement, that, you know, the homes that are going to be built within this, within the development, that they're going to be affordable, right? That the homes will be affordable. They won't be unaffordable to our future homeowners. That's just wanting to make sure that you guys obviously are looking at all the financing and all of those details when you're putting together all of the different, infrastructure plans that you guys are looking at. And again, just to reiterate, when we get to the affordable housing plan, is the prioritization for us is really to make sure that there's that concurrency, the integration that needs to happen within the phases.
Yeah, and I should probably clarify, these are deed restricted, so will have limits based on the total cost of ownership. That's how we derive at the sale/rental prices. The infrastructure financing plan, I mean, obviously there's also a market component because I think in this specific plan, it calls out a community facilities district. And so there would be some level of assessment to help fund the backbone infrastructure, and that's so that it doesn't become a burden on the rest of the city. So there will be something, but yet to be, we're still kind of,
Working on
we're still working on the financing plan. And I don't know if Laith had anything to add about that.
Not at the moment, no.
And we'll be discussing some of those tonight for some of our other projects.
And through the chair, the one thing that we are working on that will come to the council sooner than later is I think I mentioned this before, but we have to revise our development impact fees to include Miramonte. We did not do that in the past, so we're close to coming back to council for that. And that's for the infrastructure, like the parks and so forth. But part of the development impact fee could be giving the developers credit if they build the park, right? Those are some of the things we're working out.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, I think those are all the questions that I had. Do you have any additional questions? Okay, so I think those are all the questions that we had, Megan. Beatriz, is there anything else for us in terms of the comments that we have for tonight? I don't know, is there any comments that you have before we close out?
No, I think this was a productive discussion. I think like everyone seems to have a clear understanding of what the goals are and how we're getting there. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for your flexibility and patience as well.
Sure.
through the chair, just so staff has clear direction as we start embarking on putting together the affordable housing plan. I just want to summarize what I think I've heard from the council committee, which is with the 60 and 74 units, we need to dig into see if there's some flexibility on the senior housing opportunity, a little bit more clarity about the duets, and making sure that at least looking at the percentage of moderates that could be home ownership, especially in the earlier phases. Trying to think of what else I
And
missed.
then just when you're looking at that, I just want to make sure that there's, as you're looking at the affordable housing plan, that there's that concurrency and integration.
Yeah, concurrency and integration. And maybe using the duet map as kind of a guidepost with some flexibility so that there's a little bit more clarity of how they could be spaced or apart.
And then Megan, also on the duets, I know that we talked about, obviously those have to be counted, they have to be deed restricted, and that's gonna be in that as well. So to be able to have that language in there. And I just to clarify also on the general plan, so I know there's been discussions on what general plan we're using, so I don't know if that needs to be determined when we're doing the affordable housing plan. I think the specific plan has language in terms of the general plan.
Yes.
That we're
We-
following.
I know that there was a comment. We're happy to respond in a separate meeting or at the council meeting, because I think at some point we need to do a study session soon, but the specific plan had to be consistent with the general plan, and we can explain. The affordable housing plan is really about the inclusionary housing, but the specific plan had to meet the general plan requirements, and I don't know, Beatrice.
Not related to that, but I just want to acknowledge that we have a hand raised on Zoom. So I don't know if they missed the public comment period of it. This is one of our consultants asking for clarification.
And
Oh, okay, because I didn't open it for the public.
I think we opened it at the beginning
At the
for items that
beginning.
were not on the agenda that
Yeah.
pertain to that
Sorry.
pertain to the committee, but we didn't open it for public
Okay,
comment.
let me open it up for public comments before I close it, because then we have to get ready for our council
Mhm.
meeting.
we
Yeah.
have to leave at
Yeah,
5:30.
we have to leave at 5:30. Okay, I apologize for that. Thank you for noting that. Okay, so thank you, Megan. So we'll do that general plan discussion later
Mhm.
afterwards, and then we'll just open it then. So thank you for capturing that. I think that was all we wanted to capture. Okay, so let me open it up for public comments on the discussion that we had here regarding the Miramonte, the advisory committee on the Miramonte Affordable. Okay, so how do I get?
You can do it yourself.
Andrea can help us.
Okay, so with that, then we'll open it up for public comments, and if there's anyone wishing to make public comments on this item, anyone that's here I think there was a hand raised out in the Zoom. I don't think for here, they're waiting for the meeting at 6. So those that are joining us via Zoom, if you would like to make a public comment, if you can please unmute yourself. Okay, Christy, if you can please unmute yourself, and if you want to make any comments regarding the discussion for today.
This is Christy Markey speaking on behalf of Landwatch. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to comment. And we really appreciate this committee. We appreciate the time that the elected officials have taken to have these discussions in a public forum. And while we appreciate the presentation was about concurrency only, it is helpful to be able to look at more aspects of the proposal holistically and have language from the key documents, for example, from the inclusionary housing ordinance. I think that the public and the committee would benefit from more information in the packet. There are details regarding what kinds of units would be envisioned to satisfy the moderate income requirement. That was verbally addressed, but it was very hard to follow. Where will they be located in relationship to parks and services? That's part of the question of integration. So there was no detail about specifically how those units are going to be integrated. And then the mayor started to address this question of general plan policies and the specific plan. And Landwatch has written a couple of letters on this issue. And we do have concerns that so far the presentation from staff and developer have not addressed the policies and certain specific plan proposals that address affordability by design. Right now, the committee's only talked about affordability as required by the IHO, and there is a larger picture of affordability. The general plan policies that were in place when the project was vested requires an additional 38% that are affordable by design. The specific plan also requires a certain number that be rentals. So there are other requirements that are not being discussed and need to be discussed. There's a possibility that to meet those requirements, there might need to be some rezoning. And we think that really should be addressed sooner than later because that's a pretty big undertaking. And to address the mayor's concern about the affordable units not being built, we have seen situations where, for example, the developer could get to phase 9. There are just under 300 market rate units in that phase and 84 inclusionary. So all the market rate could be built with some commitment that the inclusionary will be built by some nonprofit, et cetera. And then the units are never built and the developer has walked away. And so there needs to be language in the development agreement or in the affordable housing agreement that addresses guarantees. There can be bonds posted to guarantee construction of inclusionary units. So those do need to be addressed. And I'm aware that you have a meeting. I'm going to end my comments with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any other public comments? Not on Zoom? Okay. With that, then, if there's no additional public comments, then at this time,